It's been about 3 months since I started using the Google Pixel 8 Pro, but is this smartphone everything that Google promised it would be? Let's find out. What's up, internet? I'm Brian MacDuff, aka BMac, and welcome to another video. So yes, I've had the Pixel 8 Pro just about 90 days now, and as you might expect, I've got some things to say. First things first, I need to give a huge thank you and a shout out to Google for sending out this Pixel 8 Pro gift from Google for me to be able to check out. So Google, thank you. Appreciate you. But with that having been said, let's just dive right into this baby and tell you everything you need to know about it, starting things out with the design and how things are looking on the outside of this new Google smartphone. First things first, we do now have a front and back glass that is stronger than it has ever been in a Pixel device, with it being Gorilla Glass Victus 2. But this time, as you can see, with a matte glass back instead of the shiny glass back you had on the Pixel 7 Pro. I think it just overall provides a more polished, more professional, more premium feel when you're holding the Pixel 8 Pro in your hand, as opposed to the somewhat plasticky kind of feeling I got with the Pixel 7 Pro, despite the back being made of glass. You're also gonna see the return of the full width camera band here, something I'm actually a huge fan of as it relates to symmetry, but also the ability to use the smartphone when it's face up in a flat surface without any kind of wobble. All in all, the Pixel 8 Pro is probably the prettiest, most luxurious, most flagship feeling Pixel device that I've held in my hand to date, even though it might feel a little bit large because it is still only available in one size, that being 6.7 inches. I wouldn't go so far as to say that the Pixel 8 Pro is too big. I mean, we don't have a choice. There's one size only here. But if it was a little bit smaller, at least if there was a little smaller option, I probably would opt for that one, simply because of how much one-handed use I'm doing on a daily basis. We are still getting IP68 dust and water resistance protection in the Pixel 8 Pro, with it being offered in 3 different colors: Bay, Obsidian, or porcelain. But I know it's not just about looks, it's what's going on the inside that counts too. So what kind of power are we talking about being packed in here to the Pixel 8 Pro? The big difference that we're seeing here with the Pixel 8 Pro as it relates to tech specs is the inclusion of the 3rd generation Google Tensor G3 chipset. Naturally, with a newer, next generation processor, we would expect it to be faster, more powerful, and more efficient. That's exactly what we're getting here with the G3 chipset in the Pixel 8 Pro, with it still having the same solid 12 gigs of RAM that the Pixel 7 Pro has. Everything that I could think of has been fast, smooth, and fluid on the Pixel 8 Pro with no apparent lag whatsoever. The G3 chipset is actually making a much bigger difference behind the scenes than you may even realize. For one thing, Google has implemented Class 3 biometrics now for its face unlocking feature, which means yes, obviously you could unlock your Pixel 8 Pro with your face, but also you could use your face unlocking for different kind of apps that require some level of security identification, such as with your banking apps. You do of course still have your pattern unlock or your pin unlock feature, but if you wanted to, you could also use your under display fingerprint scanner, which as you can see is pretty much seamless. It's fast, it's responsive, it's consistent. I love the thing. But the real cherry on top for all of this is a guarantee from Google that you're gonna be getting Android updates delivered to your Pixel 8 Pro until the year 2030, which is actually a little surprising considering that's 5 years longer than your guaranteed Pixel updates on the Pixel 7 Pro, which came out a little more than a year ago. But we do have to talk about here what is probably one of the most perplexing additions into the Pixel 8 Pro, the temperature sensor. Simply put, I don't get it. Google's basically just explaining that it's just one additional smartphone feature that we could learn to use on a day-to-day basis, but do I really need an object temperature sensor on the go? The answer is no. To me, it just kind of comes across as a little gimmicky. I wouldn't be surprised to see it quietly removed from future Pixel devices because I don't see anyone talking about it. Like, ever. But let's talk about something that really shines on the Pixel 8 Pro, both literally and figuratively, with that being the display. We are getting the same 6.7 inch display on the Pixel 8 Pro as we got last year in the Pixel 7 Pro, but this time we are getting some symmetrical bezels on top, bottom, and sides, in addition to getting a much less curved front glass, in addition to also getting a much brighter display. So a lot going on here. Let's unpack it real quick. One thing I really did not like about the Pixel 7 Pro and especially the Pixel 6 Pro was the curved edges on the front glass, which were basically like waterfall edges. They refracted light in a very weird way that caused a kind of rainbow effect at the edge of the display. It just felt to me very janky, unpolished, and rather just unnecessary. But with the Pixel 8 Pro, it feels like my prayers have finally been answered because now the edges are much less rounded and for all intents and purposes, perfect. And as it relates to brightness, this thing could boast up to 1600 nits of typical brightness or up to 2400 nits of peak brightness. And this is borderline mind-blowing. This phone gets super bright even when you're outside in direct sunlight, even if you're consuming HDR content. But I also do want to point out that we are getting an adaptive refresh rate in the Pixel 8 Pro that goes from 1 Hertz to 120 Hertz, as opposed to last year's 10 Hertz to 120 Hertz, which I know doesn't sound like that much of a difference on paper, but actually could make a pretty substantial difference, especially in the long run as it relates to battery life. Especially if you're using the always-on display like I am, and especially if you're using a lot of static imagery apps like reading an ebook in the Kindle app, for example, that 9 Hertz difference in that adaptive refresh rate really can make a rather substantial difference on your battery, making it better in the long run. I really have nothing bad to say about the display this year in the Pixel 8 Pro. I'm pretty much in love. But let's talk about another area that is highly anticipated in the Pixel smartphones, being the camera, and how amazing the Pixel 8 Pro photo and video capabilities are this year compared to last year. And I could hardly believe it, but even just on paper, the entire Pixel 8 Pro camera system has been improved yet again, with the wide lens, the telephoto lens, and the ultra wide lens all coming with wider apertures that allow in more light and contribute to better photos, especially in lower light scenarios. We are also getting optical image stabilization built into the telephoto lens this year, which is especially important for taking those still crisp photos at those longer focal lengths. And we're also getting a big bump up from 12 megapixels to 48 megapixels on the ultra wide lens. Those specs alone should speak for themselves, but I mean, just looking at some of the examples of photos from the Pixel 8 Pro and seeing what this camera system is capable of, let's just say there's a reason that this thing is always coming with me now when I know I'm gonna be taking pictures, especially with all the AI features built in. I am absolutely blown away by the Magic Editor's ability to use AI and machine learning to basically completely recreate or edit a photo to whatever it is I want it to be. Now, quick little note on this selfie camera, even though I'm not usually one taking a whole lot of selfies, it has largely remained the same, at least as it relates to specs from last year's Pixel 7 Pro, but it does still take great selfies, and it does now have phase detect autofocus, which arguably is an upgrade, and it does still exist as a hole punch cutout in the front display. So all in all, way more camera upgrades than I was expecting or even hoping for in the Pixel 8 Pro, and Google is literally just completely changing the smartphone photography game as we know it. But I know with all these improvements, all this talk about AI, all of these capabilities in the Pixel 8 Pro, how long could we actually expect this thing to last for? What's the battery life looking like on this smartphone? I'm seeing a solid 6 to 7 hours of screen on time with the Pixel 8 Pro, as opposed to around a 5-hour screen on time that I was getting in the Pixel 7 Pro. And this basically comes down to the G3 chipset providing that enhanced efficiency that we were talking about earlier in this video that is translating over to battery life as well. This despite the fact, by the way, that I usually have my brightness pretty darn high. People wonder how I still have retinas left with how bright my screen brightness usually is, but here we are, 6 to 7 hours of screen on time, retina's in place. We good, we Gucci. But with all that having been said, here are my final thoughts on the Pixel 8 Pro and whether or not I think it's a get it or forget it kind of smartphone. I mean, let's just quickly break down everything we've already talked about here. Better design, more power, more efficiency, more intelligence, AI, it's kind of the same thing, a better display, a brighter display, a better battery. My goodness, I mean, come on. What more could you possibly want to hear? Simply put, I am in love with this smartphone. It is most definitely a daily carry worthy smartphone for me, and probably for you as well. A huge pat on the back for what Google has done this past year with their smartphone lineup. It is just hand clap worthy, back pat worthy, praise worthy. It's just amazing what Google has done. Should you get the Pixel 8 Pro? Absolutely. I think you're gonna love absolutely everything about it. It's at the point now where I don't even know what Google has in store for us this upcoming year because of how incredible this thing is as it currently stands. Like, what is Google gonna do? How are they gonna make this even better? I don't know, it's crazy. This is where we're at, tech, it's nuts. But if you guys are interested in seeing the latest deals, prices, promos, and information for the Pixel 8 Pro, you guys could of course always head to my affiliate link, bmac.link/Pixel8Pro, or of course, as always, there's gonna be links in the comment section and video description box as well, so check those out. And with that having been said, I'm gonna go take a photo with the Pixel 8 Pro of my palm and use the magic editor to place the Pixel 9 Pro in my hand to see what that's all about. Don't think it works that way, but we're gonna try. And I will see you guys in my next video.